World War One was, and still is, one of the most bloodiest conflicts of all time, with around 65 million men serving across the globe, including my great-great-grandfather Charles William Alexander Taylor, who fought in the 4th Australian Light Horse Regiment. While many Australians associate Gallipoli with World War One, one of the most significant victories occurred later, far from the muddy cliffs of Turkey, in the desert town of Beersheba. On October 31st, 1917, the 4th and 12th Light Horse Regiments launched a bold cavalry charge against entrenched Ottoman forces. This charge is considered to be one of the most successful and courageous cavalry charges in the modern century. But how did the 4th Light Horse Regiment get here? First, we need to take a step back. After Gallipoli, the 4th Light Horse was sent to Egypt to help defend the Suez Canal and push back Ottoman troops in the Sinai and Palestine. And with the help of German military advisors and generals, it only made it harder. By 1917, the British-led forces had tried twice to break through Turkish defences at Gaza and failed. Troop morale was low, the heat was brutal, and water was desperately scarce. The Ottoman Empire held key towns and controlled both strategic movement and access to vital water wells, and Beersheba was one of them. Without those wells, the horses and men could not survive in the desert. So the Allies came up with a new plan, to launch a surprise assault on Beersheba from the east. The goal was simple but urgent: capture the town before sunset or risk collapse of the Anzac and British lines in Palestine. That's where the 4th Light Horse came in. The 4th Light Horse wasn't traditional cavalry. Instead, they were mounted infantry, which would normally ride into battle before dismounting to fight. But water and food were already scarce, and the horses hadn't had water for almost 48 hours. A long drawn-out battle would most likely mean death for the 4th Light Horse. And while the only way to take out the town before nightfall was to do something almost unthinkable: charge on horseback straight into fortified Ottoman trench lines, riding against machine gun fire and cannon fire. The soldiers weren't trained for this kind of assault. They didn't even have swords, only bayonets fixed to their rifles. Still, they were ordered to ride by. Around 800 men from the 4th and 12th regiments lined up in formation. With dust rising and the sun starting to fall, they galloped across nearly 3 kilometres of open ground fire. The Turkish soldiers, caught off guard by the speed of the attack, couldn't react in time. Some of the horsemen leapt over trenches, dismounted behind enemy lines, and fought in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Others captured artillery positions and key locations within the town. By nightfall, Beersheba had fallen. More than 700 Turkish soldiers were taken prisoner, and critically, the water wells were captured intact. It was one of the last successful cavalry charges in history, a turning point in the Middle East campaign. The conflict of months of failed assaults and brutal desert warfare was suddenly resolved by one single battle. With only 800 men, and it wasn't just one win on the battlefield, the capture of Beersheba helped lead to the fall of Gaza and later Jerusalem. It boosted morale and reset the campaign, and gave the Allies momentum. For the men of the Light Horse, it was a proud but painful victory. 31 Anzacs were killed and another 36 wounded. Their horses, known as whalers, were just as brave, charging through the heat and bullets, trusting their riders completely. Tragically, most of those horses would never return to Australia. They were either sold, gifted to other armies, or euthanized to prevent suffering. For my great-great-grandfather, he returned to Australia after the war, but like many other veterans, was scared and carried trauma with them till their grave. The charge at Beersheba and World War One as a whole is one of the situations that shows that resolution doesn't always come through negotiation or diplomacy, but more sadly at the cost of bravery and millions of lives. Today, the charge at Beersheba is remembered with ceremonies in both Australia and Israel. In Beersheba, a memorial stands where the charge occurred, and every year Australians gather to honour those who fought. I chose this battle not just because it's an important military moment, but because it demonstrates how even when outnumbered and outgunned, the Anzacs still charged in what they believed would be their death. They didn't refuse, instead they charged valiantly and courageously. They broke a long-standing deadlock and has become a symbol of Australian identity in war, showing how Aussies were resourceful, brave and willing to do whatever it took, even when the odds were against them. Thank you.